Hey guys, I'm so sorry I'm not going to be able to be there to preach this message in person. Had a last minute funeral come up and they did not consult me about when they scheduled the time. So Steve asked if I would go ahead and preach this sermon on video and share it with you that way. He asked me several months ago to preach on the subject of making the right call when you can't make everyone happy. We all know that that's a common circumstance as pastors, but he felt like probably I had more experience with that situation as a high school sports official. I've been officiating high school sports for about 14 years now. I do football, basketball, baseball, and softball. I do those sports from kindergarten level all the way through some semi-professional, two separate semi-professional football leagues. Uh, that's not as cool as it sounds. Uh, it's just old men who can't let go. But I think there's a lot of things here that we can learn. So I'm going to share some of those with you. We're going to use as our text Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 1. Paul said, I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that ye walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called. We are called to a great task, the greatest task in the world, Brother Lindsay says all the time. And so we need to walk worthy of that vocation. I encourage our officials to do the same thing, to walk worthy of the task to which they've been assigned. So let me tell you a little bit about how we go. 4th and 4 at the Millwood 16-yard line. Washington with the ball, down 14-10 with 2:25 on the clock in the fourth quarter of the Oklahoma 2A state championship game. Washington runs the ball around the left end, and the runner is tackled at the 12-yard line. I walk to the spot and look to the sideline to see if we have a first down or if we have a turnover on downs. This call will most likely determine the outcome of the game. The spot is too close to make a determination without a measurement, so I call an official's timeout and instruct my crew to bring out the chains. Every element of the measurement must be exact. Every member of my crew has a job to do. Everyone in the stadium holds their breath because this call will make the difference between Washington having a chance to score and take the lead or Millwood getting the ball with the opportunity to run out the clock. When the chains are stretched by the slimmest of margins, the nose of the ball just touches the front stick, making it a first down. When the announcement is made, the crowd goes wild. The Washington fans wildly applauding and the Millwood fans loudly objecting. But our crew was confident that we had done our job correctly and the right call had been made. All of the little details that went into making that pivotal call took place long before that moment. But when the moment came, we were prepared. As the pastor of a church, you have the joy and the burden of making the tough call on so many important issues in the life of your church and in the lives of your people. I want to share a few of the principles that my life as a sports official has taught me that inform my life as a pastor. Number one, we have to recognize our responsibility to the game. The Bible is our rule book. The Bible is our guide. And on the football field, you can't play the game without the rules. It would degenerate into a fist fight. You have to have the rules. And in the church, the Bible is our rule book. It is our guide for managing the game of life in the arena of the church. someone has to be the arbiter of the rules. And as the pastor, we are given that job. We are the one who have to uh, guide how things should go. We are the one who sets the course. We are the one who casts the vision. We are the one that manages the work of the church so that both the individual believers who function as a part of the body can be blessed and trained and implemented and used as God would have them to be used. And also so that the church can function effectively to accomplish the mission that God has given us in reaching the world for Christ. In officiating, sadly, most of the coaches, most of the players, and certainly most of the fans don't really understand what the rules are or how they are enforced and applied. The fact that there are different rule sets for high school football and college football and NFL football makes everybody think that because they've watched Patrick Mahomes on Sunday afternoon and they've heard the announcers describe the rulings and all of the things that happen there, that they're an expert on the rules. And in fact, the rules in high school football are quite a bit different. And so we have to be mindful of managing the game in a way that is fair for everyone and applies the rules as written for our sport. We have to be that arbiter. And as the pastor, we have to be that arbiter in the church. We have to recognize the responsibility that God has given to us. Secondly, on the football field, we have to understand that this is a highly emotional circumstance. People are highly invested in what is going on out there, whether they should be or not. The coaches demand success so that it is demanded of them that they are successful, or they're not going to keep their jobs. And therefore, every play, every call is important to them. They have one perspective on that play that comes from a distant sideline and they all know what they hope the call will be. But in truth, very often it's different. And we have in Oklahoma, we have 5 officials on the field, 5 sets of eyes, all with particular responsibilities and all with the responsibility to manage the game, to keep it safe for everyone, and to call the game consistently. But it's a very emotional thing. So we have to learn as officials to respond rather than react. Now, this is a great way of understanding the way that we are to respond as pastors to circumstances in the life of our people and in the life of our church that are charged with emotion. To react is just simply to quickly respond to what's going on in the immediate reaction of our flesh. To respond is to consider all of the factors and then to make the choice that best applies in the circumstance that you're in. People, for the most part, tend to be ruled by their emotions, whether it's in church or whether it's on the football field. Those emotions are going to lie to you fairly consistently. I had an experience a few years ago where we were officiating an 8-man game between Blue Jacket and Claremore Christian School. And early in the game, one of the Blue Jacket players hit a player out of bounds and then continued to drag him and threw him into the fence. It was something that we deemed to be flagrant, and as a result, we ejected the player from the game. And the Blue Jacket coach was not very happy with that, and he expressed that unhappiness in some few choice words, and eventually continued on in that process until I had to give him an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. Coaches are given an opportunity to back up, but if they get two of those fouls in the game, ultimately they have disqualified themselves from the game. We never say that we eject them. They have disqualified themselves and have to be removed. Late in that same game, the coach, who was losing badly, was driving down, their team was driving down the field, and his runner crossed the goal line for a score, and the defender, just about as he crossed the goal line, as he'd kind of just got across, the defender hit the runner, and the coach felt like that was a late hit. It shouldn't have been allowed. And so he began arguing with the fact that we had thrown his player out for a late hit, and now we weren't doing it against the other team. And so his emotions were highly involved in this, and he continued on. And finally I said, I've explained to you the call that we have. This is all that I can do. I need you to go back to the sideline, and I don't want to hear anymore. And he continued on. And so as a result, I threw my flag. I turned around. I signaled to the press box that the coach had received his second unsportsmanlike conduct foul, and as a result, he had disqualified himself from the game. When I turned around, the coach had run over and picked up my flag and thrown it as far as he could, trying to throw it into the parking lot. It was a very highly emotional night. He got right up in my face and right up against me, and I have a temperament that allows me to control myself pretty well in those situations. But my back judge saw him coming toward me, and my back judge jumps in between us and says, "Get off my white hat, get off my white hat." Ultimately, I told my back judge that I can handle the situation, and what we need to do is we need to de-escalate the situation whenever it's possible. Now that's another point that I think is very important when we begin to deal with conflict, when we begin to deal with difficulty in the church, that we do our very best to de-escalate the situation, that we don't take any action, that we don't make any comments that would cause that situation to continue to grow and to continue to get worse. By responding rather than reacting, we can bring the emotional level down to where those circumstances can be dealt with properly according to the rules in the church, according to the scriptures. This is where the fruit of the Spirit is so important. As the pastor, you need to be able to display the fruit of the Spirit to your people. And the fruit of the Spirit is never evident in circumstances that are easy and peaceful. Long suffering requires some suffering. Patience requires some things that we don't like to endure. Love is most evident when it's undeserved. And so we need to display the fruit of the Spirit. We're not their adversaries. We are not their enemies, and they need to know that. So we need to recognize our responsibility to the game. We need to understand the emotions that are involved. And then we need to know the rule book. Um, in studying and preparing and training to be a high school football official, we spend hours upon hours discussing scenarios and what the possible rules violations and enforcement of those rules need to be, so that when we face that situation, we have rule book support for everything. There are thousands of possible scenarios that could happen in the course of a season. And the same thing is true in the church. On the field, if we know our rule book, then we're able to determine the right course of action to take. We need to be able to know, okay, where is this penalty going to be enforced from? What down is it going to be? Whose ball is it going to be when this penalty is when we're finished for enforcing this penalty? Is the clock going to be running after this, or is it going to be stopped until the snap? There are all kinds of issues that every time we see a scenario, we have to consider. Well, the same thing is true when we are pastoring a church and trying to guide people and counsel them to follow after the Lord. The simple principles for marriage and the home and raising children that are laid out in the Word of God become very complicated when you're dealing with second marriages and blended families and all of those type circumstances. And it is just a fact of life that we have people that have all kinds of baggage that they brought into their marriage, and they need counsel, they need guidance, they need help. And so we have to be familiar, we have to be immersed in the rule book. We have to know what the scriptures say. We have to understand the principles behind the things that we're trying to apply. Then we need to rely on our crew. Ephesians chapter 4 and verses 11 and 12 says, "And he gave some apostles and some prophets and some evangelists and some pastors and teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Christ." One of my favorite things about officiating football is that we have a crew, we have a team, we're the third team on the field, and each of us has a responsibility, and each of us has an area that we are to be watching and looking toward. And so there are times when each of us has to get information from one of our other crew members. While making the right call sometimes seems like a lonely task, God has given us crewmates to help. And we need to remember that everybody has a job to do. Everybody has an area of responsibility. I hear fairly regularly on a Friday night, coming from the sideline, "How could you not throw that flag? That happened right in front of you. How could you not see that?" The reason is that we have a very specific area that we are watching at any one time, and we are not going to throw a flag in a situation where we haven't seen the whole play. Sometimes your head will turn and you'll see some guy rolling along the ground, and you think, he probably got blocked in the back or whatever the case may be. But we can't throw that flag unless we've seen the whole thing. And each of us has an area of responsibility that we're watching for that. Let me give an example just so that you understand. Intentional grounding. If the quarterback is trying to avoid a sack and he throws the ball away. In high school, the rules are a little bit different, really, until the last 2 or 3 years. That was not even allowed, and of course, coaches are all wanting us to officiate it by NFL or college rules. But when there is a situation that could be intentional grounding, we have to follow the correct procedure. And so as the referee, as the white hat, when I see something that appears like it could be an intentional grounding, I go to the spot that the quarterback threw the ball from, and I stand there. And then on my radio, I ask my line of scrimmage guy, whether it's the line judge or the head linesman on the other side, I ask him two questions. I say, number one, was there an eligible receiver in the area? He's going to tell me yes or no. If there was not an eligible receiver in the area, I'm going to say, did the pass cross the line of scrimmage? I mean, even if these throws it way up in the stands, if the pass went across the line of scrimmage, that's what we're looking for. I take that information. If the quarterback has gone outside of the tackle box and he's thrown the ball away and it's gone beyond the line of scrimmage, there's no intentional grounding. If one of those factors that I'm getting information from other officials on my crew was not met, then I pull my flag and drop it right there, and we have a 5-yard penalty from that spot and the loss of down. So we have a crew as a pastor as well. We have a responsibility to allow the men and women in our church to use the gifts that God has given them. And then we need to benefit from that in a way that effectively ministers to the people in our church. Number 5, remember, they didn't come to see you. One of the biggest things that I have to instill in my crew is, they're not here. Those people up there in the stands are not here to see you. Their boys out there on the field, or their hometown team is competing and trying to do their best. They're not here to see you. So we want to do our very best to accomplish our job and to do it in a way that allows us to make the game the main thing. Well, the same thing is true in our churches. They really didn't come to see you. They came to worship God. They came to see Jesus. They came to hear from him. Your ability to be a golden-tongued orator is not what is going to make the difference. They need to see Jesus. Colossians 4, 5, and 6 says, walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time. Let your speech always be with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how you ought to answer every man. Understand that what is more important is that you're focusing their attention on the game. I mentioned earlier these semi-pro football games. A lot of times there's so much talk and smack talk and all of this stuff that's going on. And a constant reminder that we give to these guys is play football. Play football. Let's play the game. Let's not fight. Let's not talk. Let's not cuss. Let's play the game. Play football. Well, the same thing is true on Sunday morning. We need to be here for the purpose that God has called us together. And then the last thing that I would encourage you is make every game the most important game of the week. Every game that I assign to one of my officials, I tell them, whether this is a game that is going to be for the state championship, or if this is a game for last place in a Class A District 4, to someone, this is the most important game of the week. As those kids, some come toward the end of their career, this is going to be the last time that they put that uniform on. Remember, it's that things are important. Ecclesiastes 9:10 says, whatsoever thy hand finds to do, do it with thy might. So as an official, we're out there to serve the game. We're out there for those kids. We're out there to facilitate that sport functioning properly. As a pastor, we got to remember who we serve. We got to remember that our words and our actions and our attitudes and our interactions with our people, they have an impact on eternity. And so we need to recognize the importance of it every time. And then we got to remember that we're going to give an account. We have a rating system in Oklahoma where after the game, both coaches are given an opportunity to tell the state association whether I did an outstanding job, whether I did a good job, whether I did a satisfactory job, or whether I definitely need improvement. There's a 5-point rating scale there, and they're all given the opportunity to rate us. And ultimately, that rating plays a small part in whether we get playoff games and those type things. So we had the crew that I had 2 years ago when we went to the state championship game had outstanding ratings because we managed games well and we were able to do well. But the fact is that we understand that, ultimately we're held accountable. We're going to face the judge in those kind of things. As a pastor, we have to remember that we'll give an account. We'll give an account for every one of them. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 17 says, "Obey them that have the rule over you and submit yourselves, for they watch for your souls as they that must give an account, that they may do it with joy and not with grief, for that is unprofitable to you." That verse is aimed at your people to remind them that the role that you play in their life is one for which you will give an account to God. And it would be much better if we could do these things with joy and not with grief, right? That's what we desire. But from the other side of the coin, we need to remember, oh yeah, here's a problem child. Here's someone that's difficult. Here's someone that is a energy drainer. But yes, one day I'm going to be held accountable to God for how I deal with them, for how I minister to them, for my attitude toward them as someone who is responsible for their eternal soul. The opportunity to serve God and people as the pastor of a church is one of life's greatest privileges, but it comes with a load of responsibilities. If you're not called to that role, you'll never be able to endure it. But knowing the one who has called you to it will carry you through it. It makes all the difference in the world. He's given you his book. And knowing him and knowing his book intimately, it's going to carry you through all of those thousands of scenarios that life and the pastor might throw at you. So let's go. Let's get this game started. God bless you. And again, sorry I couldn't be there today, and hope you enjoy the rest of the meeting.